What are these peculiar swirls? And how could an artist have known about scientific discoveries that weren't even known in his lifetime? These very questions arise when you look at Vincent van Gogh's The Starry Night. You've surely seen this iconic picture before. It fascinates us not only with its luminous colors and hypnotic celestial swirls, but also with the story it holds. Tales of madness, hope, and a surprising connection to science. Imagine being in a small cell, surrounded by walls, with only a tiny window granting you a limited view of the outside world. This was Vincent van Gogh's reality in May 1889, when he voluntarily admitted himself to the Saint-Paul-de-Mausole asylum in Saint-Remy-de-Provence, following the infamous incident where he cut off his left ear, which estranged him and Paul Gauguin. His condition was precarious. Doctors diagnosed epilepsy and mental disorders, but that didn't stop Van Gogh from painting. On the contrary, painting became his therapy, his anchor in an increasingly chaotic inner world. The Starry Night wasn't created outdoors, under the twinkling night sky, as you might assume. In fact, Van Gogh had limited access to the outside world during his stay at the asylum. The cell he lived in didn't offer a direct view of the village of Saint-Remy. He could only see the nearby olive grove and a small patch of the sky. But then, one night, he saw it. Or rather, he felt it. Van Gogh was captivated by the power of the night, by the lights of the stars and the luminous crescent moon. He later wrote to his brother Theo, "That doesn't stop me having a tremendous need for, shall I say the word, for religion. So I go outside at night to paint the stars." This sentence reveals his deep spiritual connection to nature, which he also expressed in his works. The Starry Night is therefore not just a depiction of what he saw, but above all, what he felt and imagined. The portrayal of the village in the foreground is a kind of compromise. Since Van Gogh had no direct view of Saint-Remy, the buildings and the church you see in the painting sprang from his memory and imagination. He wanted to include the element of human life, of a human community, in this cosmic spectacle. It was his way of placing human existence within the larger context of the universe. The church rises slender and pointed to the sky, contrasting with the dynamic celestial phenomena. It represents stability and perhaps a longing for peace in the middle of the inner storm Van Gogh was experiencing. But what truly captivates us all about the Starry Night is the sky itself. These enormous swirling forms, the luminous stars and the crescent moon, shining almost like the sun. All of this is not just a romantic depiction. It is a visionary representation that continues to fascinate scientists and art historians alike. The dominant cypress tree on the left side of the painting, soaring into the sky like a dark flame, is not just a decorative element. Cypress trees are traditionally associated with death and mourning, but for Van Gogh, they also symbolize the connection between earth and sky, between life and death. They act like a silent observer watching the cosmic dance. The wild swirling patterns in the sky leave the most room for speculation. Are they an expression of Van Gogh's psychological state, a visualization of his inner turmoil? That's the most obvious and also predominant opinion, that the Starry Night is a mirror of his psyche, and the incredible intensity of his emotions becomes visible in these forms. The strong, energetic brush strokes, often referred to as the impasto technique, where paint is applied thickly, precisely reflect this intensity. The luminous colors, especially the cobalt blue and yellow, are typical for Van Gogh's palette and give the painting its unmistakable radiance. But then an unexpected turn occurred. In the 2000s, some physicists and astrophysicists began to examine the patterns of turbulence in the Starry Night more closely. They claimed to recognize striking similarities to mathematical models of turbulence in gases and liquids. Think of the movement of smoke and water. Small swirls form, dissipate, and merge again. This phenomenon is known as turbulence in physics and is extremely complex to represent mathematically. Van Gogh captured these complex patterns in an astonishingly intuitive way. The brightest spots in the Starry Night, the moon and the stars, are surrounded by rings that spiral outwards. These patterns resemble the Kolmogorov scale, a mathematical description of turbulence that was only introduced in 1941, over 50 years after Van Gogh's death. How could an artist who had no knowledge of modern fluid dynamics paint such patterns so precisely? That is the central question and the fascinating twists in this story. It is presumed that Van Gogh's brain, which was flooded with so many impressions and emotions at that time, perceived and processed patterns in a way that was inaccessible to other people. His visual impairment, possibly a side effect of his medication or his illness itself, might have led him to see halos around light sources, which he then translated into his paintings. This led to a bold hypothesis. The dynamics he painted, the movement in these swirls, are what astonishes physicists. They see in it a representation of turbulence, a phenomenon that scientists are still trying to fully understand today. There have been studies that compared the brightness fluctuations in the Starry Night with the brightness fluctuations in real turbulent flows. And the results were surprising. The statistical properties of the brightness distribution in Van Gogh's painting remarkably matched the statistical properties of turbulence. This reinforced the assumption that Van Gogh's brain was in a state that allowed him to see and reproduce these complex patterns of nature in a way that went beyond normal vision. Interestingly, the Starry Night is not the only work in which Van Gogh depicted such turbulent patterns. Similar swirling structures can also be found in some of his later paintings, such as Wheatfield with cypresses or Road with cypress and star, especially in the sky depictions. It seems as if he developed a unique ability to visualize the energy and movement in nature. This ability was perhaps a consequence of his suffering, but it was also a source of great creative power. The Starry Night is a masterpiece of Post-Impressionism, an art movement that moved away from the mere reproduction of reality and instead focused on subjective sensation and emotional expression. While the Impressionists tried to capture fleeting moments and light moods, Post-Impressionists like Van Gogh, Gauguin and Cézanne went a step further. They used color and form not only for depiction, but for conveying inner states and symbolic meanings. The Starry Night is a prime example. It is not an exact depiction of the sky over Saint-Rémy, but a felt, dreamlike vision that turns Van Gogh's inner world outward. When Van Gogh completed the Starry Night in June 1889, he himself was not entirely satisfied with it. He considered it an exaggeration and preferred other works from that period. This is often the case with artists who struggle with their creations. Yet posterity saw it differently. Today, the Starry Night is one of the most famous and expensive paintings in the world, and you can see it in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. The story of the Starry Night thus has many layers. It is the story of a tormented genius who, in his darkest hour, created one of the most luminous visions in art history. It is the story of a deep connection with nature and an almost mystical perception of its hidden patterns. And it is the story of an art so visionary that it seems to anticipate modern scientific discoveries. The next time you see the Starry Night, don't just view it as a beautiful painting, but as a window to the soul of a man, and a bridge between art and science. Perhaps then you'll recognize that the swirling stars not only reflect Van Gogh's inner turmoil, but also the infinite complexity and beauty of the universe that surrounds us. And that's why it's art.